We are back, and we are joined by Vince Redmond, marriage and family therapist, and of course, ABA, expert here, and he's always here every month to lend us his guidance. And Vince, we were talking about in the news meltdowns, and this supermarket that started specialized checkout lanes because a mom whose young daughter, 5-year-old daughter Navy, had meltdowns. So it was hooray to that supermarket. We wanted to talk to you a little bit about meltdowns, and Shannon, you had something interesting.
Yeah, I wanted you to talk a little bit, Vince, about the fact that it's a two-way street, that not only is it the kids having a meltdown, but that sometimes as parents, because of our thoughts and feelings and concerns about it, we have reactions. And one of the things that I was saying during the break is that when Jem used to have meltdowns, I had so much anxiety about it that I stopped going out because I was so afraid he would have one. And that's not uncommon, correct?
Right. And actually, the meltdowns shaped your behavior to be avoidant, right?
Yeah.
So what it did is inadvertently it reinforced and strengthened the behavior of the meltdown, which one of the things that we first have to do is figure out what the meltdown is for, right? What is the function of the meltdown? Is it escape avoidance? They don't want to be there. Is it because they were denied a tangible? They didn't get a treat? Is it because, their anxiety was so high in being in social situations? We need, there's too much anxiety. I mean, there's lots of different reasons why the meltdowns could occur. And for us to be able to know as the adults, how do we respond? We need to first understand what the meltdown, what the function of the meltdown was for. And once we can understand that, then we can set up a really good blueprint and game plan on how we're supposed to respond.
So, okay, easier.
That we don't have that, and that makes it hard.
Yeah, Vince, easier said than done sometimes, and I know with best intentions. So what we need to do, I guess, is what you're saying is we need to, especially if our child is having these while they're not in the process of one, figure some of these things out. Let's take an example. Right. Let's take the checkout lane. And let's take how can a parent, let's say, okay, I take Wyatt, he has meltdowns often in the checkout lane. It's usually about wanting a candy, wanting a chocolate bar. He knows he can't have that. He'll grab it, I'll say put it back, and then he'll start to melt down. And he's got me between a rock and a hard place because there's a line in back of me. I'm embarrassed. We're all like freaking out. The people don't know what to do. And he knows he's more likely to get his way if he has that meltdown.
Right. And again, to your point of you can't figure it out right then, right? I mean, this takes some time to sit back and to analyze it and look at what led to it, to be able to come up with a function. So I definitely agree with you. It's not something that we're going to be able to do on the spot. But with your example, your example is, it's a denying of a tangible, right? He wants that one candy bar and he can't have it because of his diet or too much sugar, or maybe just a preference, and we're not able to do that. So what we need to do is establish a reinforcement system that he can have while he's out in the community, especially the grocery store, right? And practice it as much as we can in times where we're not actually shopping, right? Times that we don't need to rush through the line, where we can actually work on it. Now, we can do that with the professionals, with the therapist, but parents can do this as well. But the key to that would be to establish an equally reinforcing reinforcer that we could use that's going to be used to reinforce his good behavior in the store. That would be my first suggestion, is we would need to find something that would be just as powerful.
What about going over rules in advance? I get the reinforcer, and maybe I take in a mint or something he can have, sugar-free, dye-free mint. What about going over the rules before we go in? Is that something you suggest, like saying, okay, we're going to go in the store, we're going to be quiet, we're going to stick with mom, and we're not going to have anything that we know we're not allowed? Is that something you recommend?
Absolutely. I think that's exactly what we want to do. We want to go and we want to talk to them and give them the predicted behaviors that we expect of them going through the store. Holding onto the cart, not running away, not entering, and basically you're setting up their expectations. If we do this, and then you'll say, and then you can get your mint or your gum or your chewy or whatever it may be that we establish as the reinforcer. And then this way they can predict, they know what they're supposed to do, they know what they're going to be involved in when they're at the store. And then this way, it gives them the game plan. It gives them a blueprint on how to get their reinforcer. And they realize that when, by doing it that way, they get a reinforcer. By throwing a tantrum, they get nothing. They will shape their behaviors to do what's going to get them what they want.
Yeah, something that somebody said to me, it might have been you, Vince, but somebody said to me at some point, when I come to work, I know what the expectations are of me, and I know when I'm going to get my paycheck. If I came to work and I was working for, weeks on end, and I still didn't know when my paycheck was going to come or what my paycheck was going to look like, I might not do the level of work that I do, right? And so in whatever ability the person is, whether we're talking about a 3-year-old who's nonverbal or we're talking about a 17-year-old who's verbal, letting them know, here's what the expectation is, here's how long it's going to take, and here's what your paycheck is.
Right.
It's that thing that we talk about all the time, Nancy, about it's a duh.
Expectations and being clear and firm in what's
But
expected.
it feels
In
like in the moment that it's going to take so much time and so much energy. And the reality of it is that it takes an expenditure of energy in the beginning, and it saves us so much time and energy on the other end. But we have to recondition ourselves, right, Vince? We have to know what the paycheck is.
And you're exactly right. If we don't know what our reinforcer is, it might not be powerful enough, right? Because we don't know. If I was going to get paid 50 cents for 3 weeks worth of work, then it's not going to be very powerful, right?
Right.
But if I know I'm going to get a regular paycheck, and I know it's going to be on a regular schedule, I'm going to work just as hard each week. But going back to what you guys were saying about, if we lay out the expectations, we lay out the expected behaviors, and then what their payout's going to be, we, again, making sure that that's going to be worth their, what they want to work for. But then we have to practice it. And that's where, like you said, it's going to be much effort up front, because they're going to be trying the way that they're used to getting things done and learning a new way. But once that established expectation, and we've stuck to our routine and done it every time, then their behaviors will shape moving forward.
Vince, what about sensory overload meltdowns? That seems to me to be a little bit more difficult of a thing to deal with as a parent. Do you have any tips for us on that? I mean, is one thing that comes to mind for me, and this is once again something to run by you, should we kind of be aware of patterns? Like if our kid, they become overheated, they're outdoors, bright sunlight, bright noise. Should we start being aware of that? What can we do about sensory overload meltdowns?
Great question. Yeah, absolutely. Because our kids do get very, obviously the processing, sensory processing delays is very common with our kids. And it depends on what the sensory is. Sometimes it's noises, sometimes it's sound, or, light, sometimes it's heat, sometimes it's a combination of all of it, right, together. And again, using our grocery store example, in one of my functions that, as I said, could be just sensory overload, right? There's lights, there's wind, there's sound, there's noise, there's people, and then there's all this, expectation that's made of them. And like you said, if we can find a pattern and we see that they sensory get overloaded by one or many senses, we can now predict what's going to happen if we put them in an environment that's going to be highly, sensory driven. So then we can, have different methods to try to ease it. We can come up with a game plan. Maybe they only stay in that environment for 5 minutes. Then there's a pullout. Like you said, if it's heat, we make sure we have ice packs or those cool towels that you can wrap around their necks, to cool them down. If it's sound, you see those kids, lots of kids that have the noise mufflers, which are great ideas to be able to reduce the sensory input that they're getting, so that they can enjoy the environments that they're going to.
I gotta say, when the biggest tantrum that we would have in the same grocery store every single week, and it was so debilitating. I kept keeping charts on behavior and trying to figure out what the pattern was. It took a third set of eyes, a therapist coming to the store with us, and they were able to see in one visit that there was a change in the floor tile. That it went from a smooth to squares, and I didn't know that Jem had a visual problem. And then I started noticing it, like he would always have a tantrum when we were leaving Disneyland in the parking structure, and I thought it was because we're leaving Disneyland.
Right.
Well, it's because there's tile there, and his eyes, like, that was unsafe.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it set us on a path where they did systematic desensitization.
Right.
With Jem, and it changed everything.
Wow.
But I did not know for months.
I wonder how many kids have this.
Right? But until you have somebody with that third eye, that's
Yeah.
why I always say your program has to have legs. Take the therapist with you. I think a lot of parents misunderstand that if the therapist goes, then that the parent is hands off and the therapist does everything. I like when you take your child, you go, and the therapist only talks to you, not to your child. I think that's the best parent training, and that's when you get the best possible results.
And that increases our collaborations together, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
That's true.
You know, I think this is such, I know we're, how much?
We got 2 minutes.
Okay. I think this is such an important topic. And can we do this next month and get into
Absolutely.
some more specifics, Vince?
Sure.
Okay, because I want to also talk about, first of all, I want to invite our viewers to write in.
Yes.
Write some of your specific meltdown tantrum situations, what you need guidance and help with, so we can get those to Vince.
Yes.
And also, we want to deal with the parent in our next show with you, Vince, on this topic of meltdowns and tantrums. We want to talk about the parent part of the equation, because for me, when Wyatt was at his zenith of I would say autism, when he was so severely affected at age 4, he would have like 9-10 a day tantrums, and some of those would last a half an hour. And
Right.
I could not get my equilibrium back. I could not get back to center in any way, shape, or form, and I was dreading the next one. So I want to talk to you, maybe in a minute, you could tell us some tips for parents.
Yeah, we've got 1 minute.
1 minute.
No,
Save the world, Vince.
no pressure. No, and you're right. I mean, I think a lot of it is our anxiety goes up, and this is why it's for the kids, it's very effective to throw a tantrum out in public, because our anxiety is heightened because of social judgment and social eyes, and all the social situations that happen when we're out there. We tend to automatically try to stop it as quickly as we can. So our anxieties are heightened. They're getting reinforced. We don't know what to do, and then the stress of eyes on us, now we're being judged. It's a nightmare. And what happens though is we need, it's pre and a post, right? So pre-tantrum, if we go in with the plan and we have that strategy that Shannon was talking about, where we're collaborating with a professional, we've come up with a strategy, our anxieties are going to be a little bit lower because we have a plan, right? And we know how to react, and we know what we need to do. So it's a little bit better because we're anticipating it and we know what to do. So that's one part of the anxiety, the pre-anxiety. Then we have the post-anxiety. What do we do? Our adrenaline's going to go up, our anxiety's going to go up, even if we know what to do when the tantrum still happens. We have to find a way to be able to center ourselves afterwards. We can do everything 100% correct, and then we have to do something to ourselves to make ourselves calm down. This is where breathing exercises will come in. This is where, giving yourself a mental break. This is, different types of techniques that we can do, or we can talk to the family about, to give yourself a 2, 3, 4 minute break to be able to gather yourself, gather your thoughts, gather your breathing again, so that you can go ahead and proceed forward.
Okay,
Love
great.
it.
And
We're telling
we're gonna continue this topic next month. And so for viewers, please write into us with
Yes.
your questions. We'll be back with Vince. Sound like a plan, Vince?
Sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you so
All right,
much,
thank you,
Vince.
Vince.
Always a consummate
And-
professional.